Welcome to episode 3 of the Delancey Throne podcast. This episode I'm talking to Doug Anderson, tattooist and former host of the reality show Fight Quest. Hope you find this as enjoyable as I did. Hope you find it as informative as I did. Doug is a real humble and funny guy, and I had a real great time talking to him. Enjoy. Thanks very much for coming on. I tell you what, Doug, it's so crazy actually chatting to you because first time I became aware of you was through Fight Quest. And I remember watching it when I was about 17. Me and a good friend of mine used to come around every single Friday and we would watch it on Discovery. And yeah, it's just pretty crazy actually hearing your voice, through my own fucking monitor.
It's always funny to me when somebody says something like that, like, "Oh, it's crazy to talk to you." Like, man, I'm just a dude, man. It's crazy to talk to you. It's crazy to talk to a guy with an accent right now.
Well, it's just strange because you had this big fucking hectic part of your life, and now like you're a tattooist, and they seem worlds apart.
Yeah, I'm a pretty varied guy, I think, in general, though. I have like a lot of weird contradictions in my personality, or like distinctions, I guess, right? So just like different things that I'm into, and a lot of my interests are completely separate from the others. Mm-hmm. Like I like to do charity work, and I also really, really like to punch people in the face, right? Those things don't necessarily go together well, but.
So what kind of charity work do you do?
I do all sorts of stuff, man. I just spent a couple months in Ecuador working at a wildlife refuge, which was super cool. It was really fun. I went down there last year, and I just did like some standard work, just cleaning up monkey poops and helping the animals, taking care of like baby monkeys and stuff. But then this time I went on like a special assignment. I was a bodyguard against an aggressive monkey that they were releasing into the wild who was attacking the female researchers. So I got to go, like, my job was to defend them against this monkey, which I was like, fuck yeah, man. I've never, like, I know this monkey. I've met this monkey. I like this monkey. But I was like, I'm real down to fight a wild animal.
That's some Predator shit right there.
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was cool. He was pretty fucking gnarly too, but he never actually wanted to fight me. He just wanted to kill them. He's like classic chauvinist, He just wanted to murder women, and he didn't want to fight me. But we had some like good altercations. He would come at me growling, like trying to get at them, and then I would have to just run interference and chase him away. And obviously, we don't want to hurt this dude. Like, he's just a monkey doing what he thinks is right. He's defending his family. But yeah, it's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty crazy. So did you get many sort of jobs like that?
No, so I do like a bunch of different volunteering stuff just wherever I can, like I've worked in Thailand with people in the hill tribe people up there in the mountains. And I've done like a lot of volunteering here in the States too, like working at homeless shelters and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, occasionally you get like some weird odd job when fighting is one of your primary skills. It it brings about weird work opportunities.
Yeah. So I imagine you do travel a lot, because when we were sort of organizing this, like next week, you're off hiking and things like that. So I'm imagining that you do travel often.
Yeah, I travel a good bit, man. I get bored, I like to keep life interesting, see as many things as I can.
So with being a tattooist, is that something that you've always wanted to do as a career, or did you kind of slip into it?
Yeah, it was pretty accidental, I think. I actually hated tattoos as a kid. Because when you're little, it's like all I ever saw were just these like terrible tattoos, Mm-hmm. My mom had some like had our names, and they were like spelled wrong, just everything about it was terrible. Or you see like these horrible crosses and frogs and just these terrible tattoos growing up in the 80s. But I was always an artist, and I was always interested in art and drawing, painting. So yeah, I never had any interest in tattoos until I went to Iraq. And when I was in Iraq, my best friend Sean, he ordered a tattoo machine, and he just started tattooing people over there. So in our downtime, he would be like, in a little shelter somewhere or whatever, tattooing people up. And I started to help him out. He couldn't really draw too well, so he was doing these just fucking shitty tattoos on people. So I would kick in and just I would do a drawing, or my other friend Squeegee would do a drawing, and then Sean would tattoo it. And that's when I started to see like this could kind of really be a cool thing. You know, it could be as artistic or creative as you wanted it to be, as you were capable of making it.
Hmm.
So then when I got home and after I finished Fight Quest, it was just like an avenue of art that I wanted to explore and got into it, and I love it, man. It's a great job.
Yeah, because I've read somewhere that you were pretty much drawing. Even I'm sure when you were filming Fight Quest, you had like a sketch pad with you, and you were just drawing all your free time. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, all the time, man. I just have always loved art. It's like I have a pretty hyperactive brain, so I've never been able to meditate. When we were in China, Shifu Shide Chang would try to get me to meditate, and I've got like 30 seconds of meditation in me before my little squirrel brain starts running around, you know?
Yeah.
But fighting and art have kind of, as different as they are, they've always held that parallel for me where they slow my brain down, they force me to be in the present.
Hmm.
And I think it probably, I would guess it releases that same sort of alpha brainwave wavelength that you get from meditation, right? Because I'm just so honed in, so in the moment when I'm doing those things. Um, so yeah, art has always been an addiction for me, the same way that fighting is, because they're a meditation. I think our brains need that sort of relaxation or focus that you get from those things.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, like as an artist myself, I kind of, if I don't have my time to draw, I start to find myself getting a little bit real strung up with things, and then my day job becomes a whole lot worse.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same way, right? It's like you have this your energy just gets off, right? Like you start feeling weird. You need that thing, and I really do believe that it counts the same way that a meditation would, because you hear people who meditate say things like that, right?
Hmm.
They're like, oh, if I don't get my meditation in, my whole day's off, my energy's off, I'm out of balance, and that's the way I feel, and it sounds like the way you feel. If you don't get your chance to be creative and really like focus in on a thing, yeah.
Is there like a distinction between, your work as a tattooist and then maybe your private art? Because like I've got some tattooist friends, and they say they have very little time to spend on their own art. So when they tattoo, it's more like that is their job, and they're not really kind of getting that meditation, as you put it. But when they are able to work on their own art, then that's kind of like their meditation. Do you see it like that, or is the tattooing also, kind of like a meditation for you?
A lot of the times the tattooing is I'm lucky enough to get to tattoo a lot of things that I really enjoy making, so I get that like that cool I don't know what it is, the endorphin rush from creating a thing that you love to create, and also just like the focus of tattooing. Even if I'm doing a tattoo I don't necessarily love, I have to be tuned in on it, right? I'm like honed in on just that thing, so it forces me to be present. But there is definitely that aspect that you're bringing up. Like a lot of tattooers, and myself included, we have to make whatever dumb shit somebody wants us to make. So I've done some tattoos where I'm just staring at the person like, Jesus, do you really want me to pack all this on your arm?
What's like the most ridiculous thing that you think you have to do?
I do ridiculous stuff like on the regular on purpose. I love ridiculous stuff.
Yeah,
So
I've sort of seen you like your infinity cock drawing.
yeah, like, come on, dude. I'll do that all day, every day. That cracks me up. The guy next door to the tattoo shop is one of my good friends. He lives next door, and he's amazing. Like I just hit this guy up with a text message like, "Hey man, I want to do a tattoo on your nipple. Do you want a naked cowboy or a naked astronaut?" Right, like out of the blue, I sent him this text message, and then he texts me back just like 2-word response: naked astronaut. Like no discussion. He's just like, I'm coming over to get a naked astronaut tattooed on my nipple. So his actual nipple is like the astronaut's dick. It's amazing. But yeah, so that kind of ridiculous I love. But like, so last week I started a tattoo where just like the elements that this woman wanted in it were just insane to me. She was like, all right, I want space as the background. I'm like, cool, I dig that. That's really fun. And then she's like, I want a whale flying through the sky, and a dolphin flying through the sky, and a flower pot, and all these like separate elements that were just fucking ballistically insane. It was hard as hell to draw up, but like now that I've drawn it, it still looks cool. So I think that's the struggle with tattooing for me, is taking somebody's crazy and often terrible ideas and being like, how can I make this into a thing that I enjoy creating and that I can be proud of, right? And I think for every artist, because most artists, I mean, unless you're really lucky, you're making things off of some sort of commission.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you find a way to balance that commission with your own sanity, right? Like, I got to take these fucking terrible ideas that my boss or my client wants, and how do I make that into something that I can feel proud about at the end of the day? And that's the balance for an artist, I think, the struggle.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I mean, this is episode 3 now of the podcast, and the last 2 I've spoken to have been artists in their own right, and they've said pretty much the exact same thing, and I would agree. It's kind of, you're having to balance commissions with kind of like your own, meditation really, and it can be hard. Like, I personally find it hard to have the drive to do commissions quite often. So
Right.
it's very rare that I'll do commissions now, just because I guess I've got like a little bit of an ADHD type thing where if I'm working on something for a bit too long, I'm just like, no, I need to do something different now.
Yep.
I kind of need to pump them out straight away.
So you just like to make stuff on your own schedule and be able to produce it whenever you want, like start a project now and finish it next year, if that's what you're feeling, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Or I can just get halfway through and then leave it, and then it'll stay in like the graveyard for a long time.
Yeah, I do that all the time, man. Come back to it, circle back to it a year or 2 later and be like, oh yeah, this guy. And
Yeah.
finish this off. But I was just talking to one of my friends, and I've always been of like this mentality where that's wrong, like I feel like I don't want to leave things in the graveyard. I need to finish, I need to complete. And my friend's philosophy, and I really like this, he said that he encourages that, right? Like he only wants to work. He doesn't even force productivity. Like he says he'll have months where he doesn't paint at all. Like he'll go 2 or 3 months without painting. And then he only paints when he's really, really feeling that vibe, right? Like he's into it and he needs to get it out. And then he says he produces really good work in that like span, maybe he'll work for 4 months, just really feeling it, really into it. And then he'll take another 2 or 3 months off where he's just not that into it. He doesn't force himself. Which was interesting to me because I've always been of the mentality. It's like, whether I want to do it or not, I need to create, right? I should be creating. I feel like a pressure almost that I have to create. But that was kind of opening. I was like, that's an interesting idea, because then maybe all the things that you create are like your truest, best expression.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah. But I guess you don't really have that luxury though, do you? Because obviously your day job is you're tattooing. So
right, for tattooing you have to. So for you, like your art, is that your way of making a living, or you just do it as like side projects, fun?
That's my side project. I do have a day job, so I do work 9 to 5. But yeah, my art is kind of like, it's a way to keep me sane first off, and secondly, it's kind of like light at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? I do want to do stuff with it eventually. I do want to kind of, the hope is to have a business big enough that then that's your full-time career.
Yeah.
But it's fucking getting there, man. It's getting there. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it's just, it's more of the grind, really, isn't it? You just gotta. It's the consistency. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. So, sorry, go on.
Art as a business is so tough. You know, like to take a thing that you love just for the passion of it, just for you love it, and to turn that into business is always difficult. It would be like, like taking your kid and trying to make money off of it or something, right? Like turning your kid into like a slave. And I think that's what a lot of artists wind up having to do. Yeah. And it hurts, right? It hurts to take your baby and have to whore her out, You're like, man, I just want to make these things because I love these images, but it's not always a way to make money doing that.
No, exactly. Well, I think you found a pretty good balance. Because like you said, you're still getting the meditation with your tattooing, and as well, you're making your living from it. So I think you've got a really good balance there.
I feel lucky. Yeah, I feel really lucky about that I can make a decent living. I feel I'm at a very comfortable point financially, and I get to do it doing stuff that 85% of the time I really like what I'm doing, and I always hope the same for every artist.
Mm-hmm. So going back to your, the monkey story, presumably, do you still train at all, or?
Yeah, I do, man. I don't train nearly as much as I did when I was fighting when I was on FightQuest or when I was fighting professionally. But I try to train at least once a week. Generally, I can get in 2 or 3 sessions a week, usually just with my friends. I'm mostly just doing Muay Thai boxing now. Yeah, man, I love it. It's just a lot of fun for me, So I don't think it's a thing that I'll ever give up until my body forces me to.
Yeah. How did the proposition of FightQuest come about? Like, how did you manage to actually land the role with the show?
I always tell people I just got super lucky. It was an open casting thing. They wanted an amateur fighter, so they already had Jimmy, who's like a really good, accomplished professional fighter. And I was going to a mixed martial arts gym, and they were like, "Oh, we got this email. They're looking for a guy. You fit some of the things that they're looking for. You know, maybe send them a video." So I sent a video, dude, but I was like entirely just fucking around when I sent this video. I was like, I put like 30 seconds of thought into it. I was like, all right, what would Discovery Channel want? They want somebody with personality, somebody who can speak about, intelligently, but then probably somebody who's funny. So I was like, let me try to hit those three bases. Let's put a video together and send it out. But the video was fucking ludicrous. It was like, it would be like 10 seconds of me being like, I really appreciate world cultures. And then it'll be 10 seconds of me just being punched in the face by somebody. And then it would be like 10 seconds of me. There was an actual clip in this video that was me in a superhero costume. I was wasted drunk when we filmed it. And I like ran and dove onto a treadmill backwards and got shot face first into my friend's wall and like put a hole in the sheetrock. Right. So like, this is the compilation that I send them being like, hey, pick me. And, one of my friends or one of the producers who's like a really good friend of mine now, Erica, she said she watched it like a long time later. She told me, she was like, yeah, I watched your video and I was super stoned. And she's like, and that's probably why you got a phone call. She was like, it was funny shit when I was stoned. So yeah, then they called me in, I did some interviews, and I got lucky enough to get a really, really cool job.
Crazy. Well, I mean, let's be honest, that's not just luck. That's, your crazy artist mind, isn't it? Kind of thinking, what are they going to like? I know, I'll do this and I'll do some stupid shit. And like, it obviously won them over.
I think so. They showed me a couple other videos, and it wasn't really hard to win them over, Reese. It was like, the other videos were like exactly what you would expect from like a guy who wants to go on a fighting show. He's just like some guy growling at the camera and flexing a bunch. And it's like, damn, man. You guys missed the mark a little bit on this one. So I guess a little bit of luck and a little bit of thinking ahead, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's one thing that I really, really love about the show was like your relationship with Jimmy. I think it could have been really easy for like the show's producers to kind of want more of a rivalry between the two of you and kind of like muster up some drama, but you were really, really supportive of one another. Did they like try and push a rivalry at all, or did they kind of like?
No, they didn't. And they wanted from the gate. They wanted that, right? That was what they were looking for. Was like a supportive friend relationship, which I think was a much better way to make the show, right? Like than the like little bit of drama that you get from two guys arguing. Because how corny is that going to get after a few episodes? Like, oh, here's these two idiots arguing again,
Yeah.
But like a brotherhood thing, I think it's a little more soulful and people feel it. But yeah, so that's what the producers wanted right out of the gate. Like they found Jimmy first, and then their biggest priority was to find somebody who fit their bill and also got along well with Jimmy, And me and Jimmy got along like right out of the gate. As soon as we met, we were cool and we had a good time. We laughed together, and we had similar interests, so it was really easy to make a friendship there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think Fight Quest was actually way ahead of its time. Like, I think if it was released any time around now, it would be ridiculously huge.
Oh, yeah, man. I wish, I think we did come in, like, right as MMA was starting to, like, catapult into the fore, So, we kind of just missed our timing a little bit. But it was cool. To me, it doesn't really matter. It was an amazing experience. I would never ever take that back. It was so cool, just as what it was. And I honestly don't think that I would have really wanted to be any more famous than I got from that show. Like, I was a solid D-list celebrity for a little while, and I couldn't imagine, dude, what life is like if you go any further than that. Like Jimmy now is doing really well. He's doing like announcing, and he's got a little bit of fame going, and I think he enjoys it. But man, I could not deal with that kind of life. I don't like people harassing me, and I think I like people too much to be a dick,
Yeah.
So like people would write me back then, and I was spending like an hour and a half to 2 hours every day just responding to strangers, because people were writing me nice stuff. I don't want to be the asshole who doesn't write back, So like people were writing like, hey, you're inspirational, and it's like, thanks, man. And then you wind up being like pen pals with a couple thousand people. I couldn't imagine what it's like to be a real, true celebrity, like some kind of A-list celebrity where everywhere you go, people know you and they want to have the same conversations with you every day, everywhere you go. It's got to be like super incredibly difficult to live that way.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to kind of probably ask a lot of the same questions that you've been asked a million times before.
Oh no, dude, it's all good. So for me now, it's really chill. Like, I have a person a week who asks me about Fight Quest, so it's not anything strenuous. But when the show was on, like I'd be like out on a date with a girl or something, and some dude comes over and wants to talk to me about how he took Taekwondo in third grade for 45 minutes. And I'm just like, man, that's really cool. I'm glad you're into Taekwondo, but I really, I'm trying to trying to do things. But to me, like, it was never like, oh, I was never angry about it. I just wouldn't have wanted to proceed down that path, right? I think the level of fame I had was definitely manageable and tolerable and cool. It was fun. But I think, like, to get any bigger than that would be like, wow, that's scary. I don't know that I have the energy to invest into strangers like that.
Mm. Did you ever get, like, any other offers to be, I don't know, well, anything else in television or?
Yeah, a few. So a lot of them I turned down, like, right out of the gate, like just other host jobs and stuff like that, pretty much in the same kind of family of channels, like, Discovery or TLC, those kind of channels. I got some offers for different types of jobs that were like host or whatever, but none of them were really interesting to me. Like, for me to be a compelling or interesting host, I need to really be passionate about the thing that I'm doing, right? So some of them were just things that I couldn't care about, and I knew I wasn't going to be interesting, so I turned them down. And then there were a few things that I did was like, yeah, I would try to do that. That sounds dangerous or crazy or fun or something I really care about. And just none of those panned out. I think TV is pretty fickle that way. Like, producers are constantly throwing things at the wall, trying to get things to stick. So there are a few shows that I was like entertained for or whatever, and I think most of them never came out. One of them I just saw, actually, that I was like, maybe that's a show that they wanted me to host, and they decided to go a different way. And I think it might be an actual show on TV now. I don't know.
Oh, can you expose the show?
That show, so the concept, I don't even know what the show's called. I just saw something the other day and I was like, that sounds a lot like the show they asked me to do years ago. But the show was like about the world's most dangerous roads.
Oh, okay.
So you would like go on these roads and you would have to travel from point A to point B. It would be like a mission every episode. You would have to travel from point A to point B and get to this, a crazy to get to location. One of them was the one that stands out in my brain. Part of the trip was you had to go by train. It was in India, I believe, or maybe it was in Africa. I think it was India. But you had to go by train, and these trains are so packed that people are like riding on the roofs of the trains, hanging out the windows. And there was like tigers in the area that like have actively yanked people off the trains, right? So it's just like the whole premise of the show was like, can you survive? Which to me is like, fuck yeah, that sounds fun. Let's try it.
Yeah, I was just about to say, if there's anything else that I could see you being a part of, it's got to be something like that.
Right, like Death Defying sounds cool to me. But yeah, that one, I don't remember what like turned out, but the show either wasn't going forward or they decided against having me as a host or whatever. But yeah, I just saw a thing on just like flipping through Netflix or something the other day, and I saw a show that like pretty much fit that bill, and it had a similar name. They were calling it Highway to Hell or Hell's Highways or something like that back then. I don't know what the new show is, but it had a similar name, so it could have been that same project.
Man, crazy. Was there any particular place in the world or like a particular fighting style that you were hoping to explore but you didn't get the chance to?
I wanted to do Sambo in Russia. Would have been really cool. That would have been fun. Mm-hmm. But I think that was another issue with people were like upset that we didn't get to do a season 2 of Fight Quest. But to me and Jimmy, we were both kind of like shrugged our shoulders because we were like, man, we really like the purity and the realness of season 1. But how many fighting styles are there that we could really go and actually have a real experience with, right? And there weren't a ton left, like if we got into another 13 episode or a 13 episode season, we would have had to been like pushing some styles that were way less violent, way less aggressive, So I think the quality of the show probably would have gone down on that end. If you're into it for the violence, we would have missed out on it, I think, in the second series.
Well, there kind of is a season 2, isn't there? But it's only like 3 episodes long.
Yeah, so they counted that as season 1, I think, but then sometimes they call it season 2. Yeah, where we did India, Thailand, and Hong Kong, which were all fun. But India was like one of less aggressive styles that just the nature of the show, they try to push violence and they wanted it to be violent and aggressive for the, just for all the obvious television perks of that. But in India, it was really funny because these guys were not fighters and they didn't want to fight. And they're trying to, the producers were like, come on, you guys got to like really like come at them. And these guys just were not fighters. So my final fight in India, I fought a guy who was like, twice my size, only because he was the only one who was like willing to do it, right? Like everybody else was kind of scared. And then even him, he was scared. So like the producers were yelling at me, like in between rounds, they were like, come on, man, not yelling at me, but they're like, come on, man, you got to hit him. You got to hit him harder. And I'm like, I'm not going to hit this guy. He's afraid of me. Like this guy doesn't want to be fighting. And we were just doing like a slap fight or something. It wasn't anything crazy aggressive, but like the producers were like, please, we need to see some contact. And I'm like, I'm hitting the guy, but I'm not going to hit him hard, man. The guy looks like he wants to cry. I think we might have wound up in that sort of scenario where there's just a lot of the styles had already been covered. The like truly militant, martial, the sides with the emphasis on martial had already been covered. So we would have been doing more of the arts, I think, if we did a second season. Mm-hmm. But and there was some like tribal styles I would have been really interested in doing. Like there's a stick fighting, the tribal style out of Africa that looked really, really cool to me. There were some dangers there because it is like a tribe and bloodborne disease was pretty possible, which is why we didn't do it as one of our first season's episodes. But the experience seems really cool to just be like in some tribe in Africa beating the shit out of each other with sticks.
Yeah, that would
have been really, really interesting. Yeah, and super, super interesting TV too. It would have just been really cool.
So did you have any say on like the styles and the locations and things, or was that literally just brought to you and they were like, right, this is where you go and this is how we're doing it?
They were cool with it because Jimmy and I were the resident experts, right? Like all the people making the show weren't fighters. They didn't particularly even follow fighting. So they were learning, they were educating themselves as they went. And of course, before the show started, they're educating themselves too, right? But we were the experts. So yeah, they would take our suggestions into consideration. At the end of the day, it's a TV show, and they decided what they wanted to do, right? Like they had to pick things based on what they thought was worthwhile and going to make good TV. But yeah, we definitely gave them lists of styles that we thought would be cool. Like, and they were really cool with that. North South Productions was a really cool company that way, where they would ask our input on a lot of things, and I thought that was pretty rad to include us.
Yeah, certainly. So the whole sort of season all filmed in like one long trip, or was it kind of pieced together over time?
Yeah, we didn't do one long trip, but it would be like a trip a month generally. And then after we did the first 10 episodes, we took a break for a few months. I think what it was in the contract, Discovery had like a one season with a possible extension. That's what the contract said, right? So they bought 10 episodes off of North South, and then they could extend for 3 more episodes if they chose to, which they did choose to, which is why we got that little tiny second season thing. So yeah, we filmed the first 10 episodes like pretty consecutively, month to month. I think there was 1 month where we took off because I was too injured. I couldn't get out of bed. My leg was like infected from an injury I got in Indonesia. But other than that, we would go consecutively, and then we had a few months off, and then I think we did our last 3 episodes pretty consecutively too. We do like a couple weeks of filming, a couple weeks back home. So for me, like the weeks back home were just come home and you better fucking go back the next episode and be twice the fighter that you were, right?
Yeah.
I think Jimmy was already at a really good level of fighting when he started the show. I shouldn't have been on that show for my level of skill, right? Like I was super new to fighting, and I didn't have any experience really, So for me, every time I went home, those 2 weeks were just like, I'm going to machine workout. Like I would just put in my head that I was the Terminator and just needed to work out as many hours a day as possible to try to get as good as I could, so I didn't get my ass kicked quite as bad on the next episode.
Well, that was one of the amazing things about the program, though, was obviously, you and Jimmy are 2 completely different people, and Jimmy was a lot more, I don't know if professional is the right word, but you could tell obviously he had experience, and you were a lot more grit. Yeah. You were a lot more heart. You were like, no, I'm fucking going for this.
Yeah, that's all I could bring to the table at the time.
Well, it serves you really well, though. I mean, you were going toe to toe with the majority of the people.
And I think that's a big thing, right? Like, in fighting especially, but in a lot of things in life, like you can hang in there if you just have the fucking heart, right? You can hang in there. Could I have beaten a lot of those people? No. Could Jimmy? Yeah. Jimmy had the skill to do it, right? But I could get in there, and to me that's what it was always about. Fighting in general, not just that show, but fighting to me was just proving to myself that I wasn't a quitter, that I wasn't weak. Not so much about beating the other guy. It was always more a challenge against myself, right? I wanted to know what was going to beat me, not could I beat that other person.
Yeah, I think that's what made you more relatable, because I think Jimmy was more of like the father figure of, right, you kind of like, you look at your dad and you can do anything in the world, whereas like with you, it was like, holy shit, like all you got to do is give it your all and you can fucking hang in there,
Right, if this idiot can do it, I probably got a shot to do it too, right? Or Jimmy, like you see Jimmy do it and you're like, man, that guy's just good at what he does. Right, and that was cool to me, and I think like a lot of people felt the same way as you, and a lot of people like have reached out to me over the years, like, man, and it's interesting to me because I think people got encouragement from that show in ways that don't relate at all to fighting. Like a lot of fighters write to me and say, "Oh, I started training because of that show," and that's awesome, man. I'm so glad that people did that. But then people would write me just saying like, random life events where they're like, "Oh, I would just think about you getting your ass kicked, and if you could do it, then I know that I could get through." Like people wrote me about cancer or diseases and stuff like that, and it was so cool to know that me getting punched in the face had some sort of tangible benefit to other people's lives or their emotional state. And that still is really cool. And I still occasionally get messages from people who say similar kind of things.
Yeah, and I think you awesome, always
man.
will, man.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And that to me was like the double gift of that show was, the experiences I got to have, which were amazing. And then getting to share those experiences with other people and, potentially help them or encourage them or inspire them. It's really cool to get to be able to be that part in somebody's life.
Yeah, but another thing that's really interesting is obviously Jimmy was the more experienced fighter than you, but for the most part, you were put in like the shitter situations, man. Like talking about fucking violence. What was up with the Israel like Krav Maga episode? What was that all about, man?
All right, so there's another TV series that was real similar to ours that came out at the same time called Human Weapon, which was a cool show too. But Human Weapon they were like less violent than our show. They were a little bit more controlled. So what had happened was Human Weapon went to Israel and filmed a Krav Maga episode that aired before ours. So when we went to film in Israel, Avavit, my trainer, and her grandmaster or whatever the guy above her were like they were very upset with Human Weapon's portrayal of Krav Maga. They were like, that looked like some pussy shit, basically, right? So their whole intention as we came was like, we need to make this shit look tough as fuck. Like we need to save Krav Maga's face. So yeah, the way to do that in her mind was just to like beat the shit out of me as much as possible.
Well, that elbow just comes out of nowhere.
Dude, yeah. I mean, even when I got hit with that elbow, that's so funny. My boss was just like laughing at me about that last week. I don't know why he brought it up. But yeah, when I got hit with that elbow, I didn't even know that I got hit. Like I was just standing there listening to an instructor talk, as you normally would in a martial arts class, and then she was like, "I'm going to show you how to do the elbow, Doug." And then the next thing I know, like the whole world is like blurry. And I was like, why is the world blurry? And then I'm like looking at her funny, like trying to figure out why everything got blurry. And I was like, wait, this is what it's like when somebody hits you. Maybe I just got hit. And then I like move my tongue around in my mouth and there's like a piece of tooth in there. And I was like, this bitch just elbowed me in the face. And that was the only one that they filmed, but she continued to do that throughout the week. Like she would just come up and like swing at me, where it got to the point where I had like this mild case of PTSD. Like anytime she'd come near me, I would just be like putting my hands up in like a guarded fighting position, ready for her to try to crack me in the face. Like she was an intense chick. She still is an intense chick. She's a very very aggressive woman.
Yeah, like everyone under her tutelage looked like they all had Stockholm syndrome or something. They all like looked fucking terrified. Every single one of them looked just like they were blank. They were just blank faced.
Yep. Absolutely. And it was really, really funny to me because, like, I would talk to these guys because we would go through, and I went through all sorts of grueling training, right, all over the world, and I experienced all sorts of different ways to train and different levels of violence, right? But Israel was shocking to me even at this point, where I was like, man, this is really fucking intense. Like, these guys are crazy. So I would talk to the guys I was training with, you know, like when we're on a lunch break or something. I'd be like, man, how do you guys survive training this? And they were all like, dude, we do not train like this. They did train intensely, I think, on the regular time. And they all definitely did have fear of Abu V. You're right. Like, they had Stockholm, man.
Yeah.
But they were like, no, we don't train to this level of intensity. They're like, we're just doing this now because she's going to kill us if we don't. Like, everybody I trained with that week got injured. Everybody. By like the end of the week, like, everyone was out. There wasn't anybody to train with. I don't remember if I got any serious injuries. I think I had a concussion at one point. I was like projectile vomiting. So I'm pretty sure I was like at least mildly concussed. Thankfully, it wasn't like a terrible concussion. But I don't think I got any other injuries that really stopped me in that episode. I got like a black eye or something, you know, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a concussion, black eye stuff.
Jimmy's training, it was obviously strenuous and hard, but like in comparison, you know, he was literally watching like the Disney Channel with a fucking beer. You know what I mean? Like, in comparison with yours, it was mountains apart.
I think it came down to they just knew our personalities, and they knew that Jimmy was more professional in a sense, right? Like, Jimmy, if they presented him with a thing that didn't make sense for like legitimate sports training, Jimmy would be like, why am I doing this? This doesn't make sense. I don't want to do this. Where I just have too much pride to ever back down. Like, you tell me that I have to like wrestle an alligator to get better at Taekwondo, and I'm like, well, I'm not gonna be the pussy who says no to wrestling an alligator, so let's do it. And the producers knew that, so they're like, just throw Doug into whatever fucking you want to have going. Yeah.
What kind of other injuries did you experience? Because you said you had like a mild concussion, and you were saying earlier on about I think it was your foot.
Yeah, in Indonesia, that one was bad. So I don't know that I ever even watched the Indonesia episode of the show, so I'm not sure what they show on it. But I kicked in the elbow while we were sparring. You know, like, threw a kick at him, he blocked it. Elbow hit my foot, which is a real common injury. It happens a lot when you're kickboxing, right? So you get like a little bruise on the top of your foot that's like the size of an egg. But normally that bruise will hurt really bad for like 3 days. It'll feel like your foot's broken. So you got 3 days where you really can't walk at all. So I was like, damn, this sucks. This is a shitty time to get this injury. And then the guys that I'm training with were like, oh, we got you. We take you to a massage. They don't really speak English well, but they're telling me about a massage, and I'm like, dude, that sounds sweet. You know, like, we're like hot and sweaty at the end of a day of working out, fighting each other. I'm like, I'm just picturing like some pretty Indonesian girls giving us all rub downs. I'm like, let's do this. This sounds cool. So we go up in the van. We drive for like an hour and a half, and I'm like, these girls have to be super hot. I don't know why we're driving so far to get to this place. But we pull up, dude, and it was like straight up like out of something you'd see on like a HBO TV show about crime, like Crack House, you know? And I'm like, what are we doing here? Where's the massage parlor? And they're like, massage. And they're like dragging me into this crack den. We walk in, and it's straight up like, I was like, all right, well, maybe on the inside, you know, things will change. It's all gonna start to make sense when we see the spa. And we go inside, and it's like, dude, the crack den from the outside pales in comparison to the crack den on the inside. It was like, what the fuck? There's just like people sleeping on the floors. There's chip paint on the walls. Everything's filthy. So they bring us into this back room, and no lie, man, there's a guy sitting on the floor. He's got a tatami mat rolled out, and he's like this heavy set Indonesian dude sitting on the floor in a purple Hard Rock Cafe sweatsuit, smoking cigarettes. And he's just staring at me, and they're like, massage. And I was like, motherfuckers, this is not what I signed up for. So I sit down on this mat. They have me go first, and they're like explaining to me like, this guy massages injuries or whatever to like, you know, help your recovery time. So all right, whatever. So we didn't even film any of this. This was like after the camera crew didn't even come, because they also thought I was just going to be getting a massage from like a cute girl. They were like, that's not going to make it in the show, Doug. But it wound up being the dude just took my foot. So I've got like this egg-sized bruise on the top of my foot. He takes my foot and sorry about that.
That's fine, man.
Dogs are bugging out. So he grabs my foot and just starts grinding the bruise down. And I've been through a lot of pain in my life, but I'm telling you, like that might have been the worst pain I ever felt. This guy was grinding this bruise out of my foot. So I'm just like, I don't want to yell. I want to yell with all my fucking heart. I want to yell, but I don't want to be that guy. You know, I'm like all the dudes I'm training with are watching me, so I'm just like holding this in, and I'm just thinking like, this is what pregnancy feels like. This has got to be what happens. Just gritting my teeth, pushing through it. This guy, he grinds the bruise out of my foot, like just pushes on it with his palm and pushes the bruise out. Excruciating pain, but whatever, it's over. And then he's telling me, he's like, whatever they're translating through to me, that, you know, it should be better by tomorrow or whatever. It seems really weird to me, but I was like, whatever. People do crazy stuff in other countries, and a lot of it works. So maybe this is it. But it didn't work. And what wound up happening was my foot got infected. All the blood that he pushed down in there never dispersed. So it all just, I guess, coagulated in there. And my foot, like you can see it in that episode, my foot is huge. It's like a loaf of bread. And it just got worse. Like by the time we got home, I couldn't walk on it. I wound up spending a month in bed. And I'm just a dumbass, you know. I was like, I'm not going to the hospital. I don't want to bother. I go to the Army hospital here because I was a veteran. So I don't want to like take from their resources. So I'm like, I'll just heal. I'll just deal with this. And I just laid in bed. Every time I got up, it would just be burning pain shooting through my leg. My whole leg turns red. You know, it's swollen and red now. So finally, my mom's screaming at me, like, you need to go to the hospital. I go to the hospital, and they were like, man, if you had waited another day or two, we would have had to amputate. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, they got me straightened out, took care of the infection, and then we were on to the next episode. So the next episode was hilarious. We did boxing in Mexico, and I had zero cardio, you know, like I just spent the past month laying in bed, and we were at some crazy elevation, to where like, even if you have good cardio, you're going to get tired out quick. And I was literally sparring with guys for like 45 seconds and then wanting to pass out in the ring. Crazy experience. But, yeah, so I got some injuries, man.
There was something wrong with your eye at one point as well?
Yeah. So in Japan for Kyokushin karate, which is an awesome style, I love training.
Yeah, that was brutal. That seemed really brutal.
Brutal, but really tough guys, really cool, really honorable style of fighting. You know, I loved it. But they're just about trading blows, man, going blow for blow, and it's really like less a test of skill and more a test of like who's got the heart to hang in this, you know. So I love that style. But yeah, so they didn't show this fully on the show either for like drama reasons. They couldn't show the whole deal. But I did a 9-man kumite in sparring, so I fought 9 guys in a row for a minute each. They didn't show it because the final fight in that episode was a 5-man fight, and they were like, well, we can't have your train up be harder than your final fight. But the train up was way harder. I got my ass kicked in this 9-man fight, you know. By like the 4th guy, I'm tired, you know, so I'm pretty wore out, and these dudes are just coming in, kicking me in the head, boom. So I get knocked out. I'd wake up, and my trainer's just beating me with a stick, you know, and I'd stand up and start swinging at whoever's in front of me. Like I'd see a guy in a karate gi and be like, oh, I guess I'm in a fight. I don't know where I am, but it looks like I'm in a fight. Let me swing, you know. So that went on for 9 minutes of me just getting knocked out multiple times. And when I stood up at the end of it, I remember the cameraman coming over and interviewing me, and I was so out of it. I was saying stuff that like a person on a mushroom trip would say, you know, like it was like I was on acid. He was like, so how do you feel, Doug? And I was like, we've all been here before. And he was like, yeah. He was like, yeah, we were here early this morning. And I was like, no, but we've been here before many times. And he's like, what the fuck, you know? So then we do a little bit more training and we go to lunch. And while we're eating lunch, you know, like I'm just like beat the fuck up, but we're eating lunch, you know, everybody's getting their noodles or whatever. And the field of vision in my right eye, now my eye wasn't bruised at all. I didn't have like black eye or anything like that. But the field of vision in my right eye just kind of like just closed down, and then shut off. So my eye just completely turned off and was just black. But there was no like outward injury. Like my eye was wide open, but I couldn't see anything out of it. So I guess it was just some swelling in my brain or something.
Yeah, nothing to worry about.
I just shut that down. But it's fucking hilarious. So then, you know, I couldn't eat lunch. I was nauseous because I have a concussion, you know. And then we eat lunch and take like a 10-minute break. And then they're like, all right, next round of training is we're going to go for a run. And I was like, yes, finally a break, you know. Like I can't deal with getting beat up anymore today. So they drive us to the point where we're going to run, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to drop you off here. Just run back to base camp." So they start driving, and they're driving and driving and driving. We're just driving down a fucking mountain, and I'm like, when are we going to stop and start this run? So they drive us to the bottom of this mountain and drop us off, and we have to run up. And that was one of the hardest points for me in Fight Quest, I think. Like, I'm blind in one eye, I'm concussed, I want to puke really, really hard. And I just need to get through this run, right? Like, so all I'm thinking is, like, make it up this fucking mountain, and you're done. You can have a couple hours off. And while I'm trying to get up the mountain, the cameramen are obviously, they need to film me. So they're driving next to me in a bus, just like hacking exhaust fumes into my face. And the cameraman's like hanging out the window, asking me questions about how I feel. And I think that was the only time I was ever rude to any of the camera people, because they were good people. Like, I really like those guys. I'm still friends with them, you know? And I think it was my friend Robert's like hanging out the window, and he's like, "Doug, how do you feel?" And I was just like, "Go fuck yourself." But yeah, man, it was just like, oh, that was a shitty feeling. But yeah, so I got several concussions throughout the course of the show, and then just, yeah, you know, bumps and bruises, broken bones. In Japan, I broke my finger and my cheekbone, and that bad concussion, and my leg was fucked up too. In the final fight there, I could barely walk. But I remember me and Jimmy are in the hospital after our last fight in Japan. And it was like something out of a kung fu movie, right? So here's these two guys in bloody karate gis just sitting in like a Japanese hospital. We're just like wiping blood off of our faces or whatever, you know, sitting there waiting for the doctor to see us. And I go to blow my nose, and I blow my nose, and as I'm blowing, the entire left side of my face just swells up in proportion with how much I blow my nose. So like it swelled to the point where I could see it out of my own vision, right? So I'm watching my face blow up, and Jimmy like looks over at me, and he's laughing, and I'm like laughing at this like ridiculousness of the situation. And then the nurse comes over, and she stops, she sees us laughing, she realizes this isn't a big deal to us, and she pushes on my face, and I can like actually hear my face deflating, like. So that's a sign if you have a broken orbital or a fracture in your cheekbone, the pressure from your sinus will just like escape into your face.
What the fuck? That's like so some John Carpenter's The Thing stuff, this is.
Yeah, so the next time I broke my cheekbone, I knew it was up. But yeah, we took some pretty bad beatings, man. But worth it. I would take that trade again. You know, the concussions were worth the experience for sure.
So were there any times when you got home from like an event like that, for example, you were saying, you know, you'd get back and you'd be like, right, I'm going to fucking train like a machine now before the next one. Did you ever get home on certain occasions and just go, I don't know if I can do this?
Man, you know, I think my brain is delusional enough that if I ever did think that, I would have wiped it out of my memory. I might have thought that. I can't say that I'm like above it. I do remember the only time I clearly remember being like, what the fuck, was the day after our final fight in Japan. So I had the day after my face just swelled up like that. And so I got a broken cheekbone, concussion, broken hand, my leg's swollen, I can barely walk. And then that night of the final fight, we went out on top of all that and got wasted drunk. Jimmy didn't. Jimmy doesn't drink. But I got obliterated drunk with all the guys that I trained with. It was a great night. But in the morning, I wake up. I'm in my hotel room just like trying to sleep, you know, hangovers kicking in on top of the concussion. And I keep getting woken up by this like crunching sound in my pillow. And I'm like, these fucking pillows, man. Like, I just want to sleep. So I throw the pillows off the bed, and the crunching sound is still happening. And then I wake up and realize that the crunching is in my face.
Oh my God.
And that was like one of those moments where you're just in so much pain that I'm laying there like, oh, is any of this shit worth it? Like, what am I doing? And I think that's what it is. I talk to a lot of fighters, and they say the same thing. Like, in a fight, you very rarely ever feel pain, right? Like, there's enough adrenaline. You feel pain, you recognize it, but it's not like the type of pain that, I don't know, to me has ever made me be like, I need to stop. This sucks too much. But the day after the fight is when you start to, that's when like your rational brain is feeling the pain, and your rational brain is like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Like, why do you do this?
Yeah.
That's the only point I ever remember being like, why am I doing this? And I think as soon as the hangover went away, I was back into it again. I was like, fuck that. That was just me being weak.
So what you're saying, Doug, is you literally need to hear your face crunch you to actually consider, maybe I should do this.
Yeah. I'm not the brightest guy, but
it's all heart. That's what it is. We've established that it's all heart. So, like, besides the Krav Maga episode, were there any schools that you were training with that you felt like genuinely wanted to hurt you, like to prove a point or something like that?
Oh man, the first episode we ever filmed was the Philippines. We did Eskrima, which is a really cool style, sick fighting style. But it was the first episode we filmed, so it was new for me and Jimmy, of course, but it was also new for the producers. Like at that point, everything wasn't entirely hammered out. It was still like, I guess like in artist terms, it was more of like a rough draft sketch than it was the fully hammered out painting, right?
Yeah.
So they had a real strong idea of what they wanted to do, but not all the details were worked out. So anyway, what I didn't know the whole time was that the guy that I was fighting was my instructor's best friend. The guy I was set to fight at the end in the final fight was my instructor's best friend, and like one of his proteges, right? So he's training me to fight a guy that's his guy. And he, of course, a lot of these masters were looking at this as a way to show how powerful their style is. And some of them wanted to do that by showing that they could teach a new guy how to do it. Some of them wanted to show the power of their style by showing how good their students were, right? Like how bad would it look if his 17-year student got beat by me with 5 days experience? And that was the mentality he took. So that guy was like I always describe him as like a Filipino Darth Vader. He was just like evil as fuck, man. And he really wanted me to lose and tried to make me lose in so many ways, like just kind of like avoiding training me on anything that had anything to do with what I was really doing. And he would just do stuff to wear me out and break me. Like my first day there, I did one of the hardest things I ever did on FightQuest. It was like a 6-hour torture session type of deal. Started out with him just like I got covered in chicken's blood and got beaten by him. Like he just like slapped me around, hit me with a stick or whatever, which that was kind of cool. I was like, yeah, this is some badass warrior shit. I like that. And then it turned into a 6-hour smoke session where it was just like me being forced to do exercises for 6 hours by myself and like just going into muscle failure on every muscle in my body, like full body muscle failure. Looking back on it now, it's been, I don't know how many years, and it still hurts to think of that day, like the type of hurt where it's like every step is like, all right, just do one more burpee, one more squat, one more lunge, whatever he was trying to make me do, it was always to the point where I literally had to like plead with myself to do one more of everything, and at the end of that day, I'm so exhausted. Like I've never had any sort of workout, even still to this point, that ever compared with that. At the end of the day, I'm living in this tree fort, and the bathroom is down on the ground. It's like this just little hut bathroom, and there's like a shitty toilet in there with no seat. And I have to take a shit at the end of the day, man. And I go, so you have to hover over this toilet. There's no seat. So I'm just like exhausted. It's one of those moments where you're like, man, what have I gotten myself into? This is too hard. I still have 5 days of this left to do. I can barely walk or move anything right now. I'm so exhausted. So I go to take this dump, and I hover over the toilet seat, and my legs just give out. They give out while I'm pooping, and I fall into a toilet of my own feces. And bro, I was so broken that I was just like, fuck it, I'm sleeping here. And that was like, it took me like 5 minutes to get out of there. I really had just resigned myself to like, whatever, I'm just going to sleep with my ass in this shitty toilet, and I'll get up in the morning, and tomorrow's a fresh day. But eventually I got up the will to pull myself out of the shit water. But yeah, man, that was a rough moment.
It's bad then.
Yeah. So that was like the Philippines in a nutshell. Was my trainer just trying to break me, which was tough, but also for me, I think that was a good intro to FightQuest, right? It was a good way, like, here's the worst case scenario of what's going to happen. Do you have the balls to deal with this every time? Like, this guy wants you to lose. This guy's going to send you against somebody who's really good. Are you willing to go up against all the odds? And so to me, that was a good intro to the show. And it like really helped me get my mind right for the rest of it. So everything from then on to me was kind of like, all right, this is in cruise control, even though it's super hard stuff. At least my trainer's in my corner this time,
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. The fact that obviously you're going to get some trainers that are like, right, I'm going to show how strong my style is, or the the fighting style itself is by training this guy up in 5 days to the point where he can do some damage. To I can't have this guy beating one of my students in 5 days.
Guys. Right. So what they did after was the producers realized that you couldn't have the final opponents had to come from different camps, right? So that there wouldn't be that conflict of interest for the trainer. And I think it's a better way for a trainer to show the power of their style. If you can teach somebody how to do a thing in 5 days, if you can teach somebody how to fight your style in 5 days, like, man, that is a useful style. That style is good. If you can learn anything that's worthwhile to take away from that in 5 days, that is a solid fighting style. Yeah,
definitely. So you actually adapted to it then. So after that, it was you would get a fighter from a different camp rather than
Okay. So the producers, and that's what I meant when I was saying before, like, the producers didn't have everything hammered out because they're not fighters and they didn't understand that aspect, right? And I think that was the thing where they took Jimmy and I's advice on that. We were like, look, man, a fight team is a team. They're going to stick together, and we're going to be excluded if that's the scenario that we're doing every time. So it's best to like let us be a part of that team, and then let's draw our enemy from somewhere else, and then the team will really help us embrace us as we fight that enemy.
Yeah, which really makes sense. It's really interesting seeing the different, just the variety of personalities in the trainers and in the instructors. You compare like the Krav Maga one, for example, to your trainer in Thailand with Muay Thai. Like, you seem to have a real great friendship with that guy.
Oh, I love Parang. Parang is the best, the coolest guy ever. We still talk all the time. I love him.
Do you really? So you keep in contact with some of the...
Yeah, I keep in contact, for sure. Parang and Shifu Shide Chang in China, like, such good guys. Almost all my trainers were really, really good people. But just not everybody I didn't stay in contact with. But Parang and Shide Chang, I really loved. Like, they just had amazing spirits. And Parang's doing really good. He's still... he's a full-time Muay Thai trainer still. He has his own place, and he trains people all around Thailand, and he travels sometimes to train people now, which is really cool for me to see because he's a great trainer and just a cool dude, just a really cool guy.
Yeah, it was really entertaining and quite endearing, actually, when he was showing you the traditional dance that you do before the fight, and he was kind of like putting on that fake makeup and combing his hair and things like that.
Yeah, he's great, man. He's just a really funny, goofy guy. Yeah. I love that about Thai people in general. It's a big part of their culture. So I guess every culture emphasizes different virtues, right? Like in Rome, there was like gravitas. That idea of seriousness was very well like respected and regarded. If you were like a deadpan kind of guy, I don't know what you would say the emphasis in our culture is. We have a bunch of different things, maybe. But in Thailand, one of their prime virtues is called sanuk, which is like silliness almost. It translates to like happiness, joy, silliness. So that's like a really powerful virtue for them. If you could just be kind of goofy and fun, like, yeah, just like Pong was like pretending to put on makeup, or he would like tickle me and shit while we're training, just really like silly stuff that people would be offended about, I think, if you did in the States, but there it's like very cool, and I love that. He was just such a warm, genuine guy.
Mm-hmm. Did you obviously you went all around the world and things, did you have any kind of scary moments outside of filming, maybe if you and Jimmy had gone out for the night or something like that?
Oh yeah, so in the Philippines, again, like, the Philippines are a super interesting place, beautiful country, but in Manila, it's pretty dangerous, or at least it was at the time. I don't want to like bring the place down now if it's changed, but in the time, I haven't been there since. It was a pretty dangerous city, and we really, really stood out there. So it's almost entirely a Filipino population. So like 98% of the people are 5'3", brown skin, black hair, black eyes. So for us and our camera crew to walk through, like, we definitely stood out. So we attracted a lot of attention. And Manila had a really high crime rate, some like crazy crime rate. There's like just security guards everywhere with shotguns outside every store, outside of like a Starbucks. There's a guy with a shotgun, Yeah, it's a super violent city. So like, people are just knife fighting all the time, killing each other there. And some guy, so that was the only place where we had a security team. And so the security team stories, man, if you could hear these stories, they're amazing. They're so good. But yeah, so our security team was like walking around with us, and then they're like, hey, you guys got to get in the van, get in the van, get in the van. And we were just walking around like, I think we were buying like lunch or something, you know? And they're freaking out. And I'm, you know, like I'm like this tough guy fighter. I'm not going to run. So I'm like trying to be cool. And like, I'm not going anywhere. And they're like, get in the fucking van, dude. So they forced me and Jimmy and everybody else into the van. And there's like some altercation going on outside. Some guy screaming at them. They're screaming back at the guy. But basically what they told us later was that the guy had just started like yelling behind us. And we heard him yelling, but we didn't think it had anything to do with us. But he was yelling about how like, we thought we were like hot shit, you know. He's like, "Oh, these guys think they're so good. These white guys think they're better than me. I'm gonna kill them both." And like the dude was like whipping around a knife, yeah, for no reason at all, you know. Like generally, the rule of thumb in most places in the world are just, you know, don't start shit and there won't be shit. But yeah, this dude was just willing to kill us just for being white dudes. Yeah, so that was like probably the shadiest incident I think we had during Fight Quest. But most other places, I don't remember anything being like really dangerous or anything like that, you know. Nothing that stands out anyway.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you much longer. Obviously, we've pretty much hit our hour. But I've just got to say thanks again, Doug. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
No
it's cracked me up totally. So I really do appreciate it. Obviously, I'll put your Instagram handle and things like that in the description. Is there anything else you want to plug at all, or?
No, not at all. Just thanks to you for having me on, man. It's been a fun time talking, and I love seeing your artwork. So keep it coming, man.
Oh, cheers, Doug. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you very much.
All right, Reese.